Hello, everybody. I'm Mr. Latimer,
I'm Dr. Scoggins.
and this is the first video of AP Human Geography. We're going to teach this class skill by skill. It is our hope to have covered every skill in the AP Human Geography curriculum. Be advised, this was made in July of 2023. AP Human Geography curriculum updates every 4 years. So this video series might not be in use next year. But we'll probably make more videos. All right, so let's get started. We're going to start with Unit 1, Thinking Geographically, which is just about basic geographic concepts. These do seem pretty basic, but I want y'all to know that these concepts will be found throughout the entire year. So this is like the foundation of the house that you're building. So you want to make sure you know these concepts before you venture on into the next unit. Okay, so today we're going to learn about skills 1.1 and 1.2. You don't need to know the names of those skills. We're just going to call them 1.1 and 1.2. So it is my hope that by the end of this video, you will be able to identify types of maps, types of information presented in maps, and different types of spatial patterns and relationships portrayed in maps.
Well, it's also our hope.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Explain different methods of geographic data collection or data.
Data.
If you want to be fancy.
Yes, data. All right, skill 1.1, introduction to maps. So hopefully by now, I assume you're at least 14 years old and you've seen a map, I hope. So what you see here are maps, for those of you who don't know. There are two types of maps. The first is called a reference map. A reference map shows you the Earth's surface, and it can do that in multiple ways, but the two ways that you're going to see in this class is either political maps or physical maps. So, Dr. Scoggins, if you had to guess, political meaning the cities and borders of countries, what map would you say is the political map?
It's probably the map that has multiple bizarre colors, like blue and green and orange, that have the names of the countries and the areas where the cities are.
That makes sense, and you were absolutely right. It is. The other type of map is called a physical map, which just shows you the physical features. So if you ever get confused between the two, look for the word inside the definition that matches.
And this too is a colorful map, but if it's tan, it's probably people who can't live there.
Yes, because it's a desert or a mountain.
Or they do live there, and it
sucks to be there.
It just sucks.
Like Sedan or...
I mean, look, well, I don't know, because if you look at the Western United States.
But, like, nobody lives out there. Like, you have the West Coast, people live on the coast.
That's true.
So...
That's true. And then you have the Calamari Desert right over there.
Yes. The Taklamakan Desert.
I realize these kids can't
see. They don't know what
I'm pointing at a screen.
I think the map, do
you think the cursor can show?
I hope it does. Okay.
So the other maps are, I affectionately call the lying maps. They can lie to you. These are thematic maps. These maps show us data, allowing us to understand something specific, such as temperature, pollution, elevation, who voted for who. You're going to see these types of maps during presidential elections. We have one coming up.
Yeah.
But specifically, two types of maps. There are tons of thematic maps. But specifically for this course, we're going to look at two of them, choropleth and cartogram. Yeah. The choropleth map is a map that will color a region, a country, a state, to tell us data about the place. So again, the election maps. Who voted for Biden? Who voted for Trump? Who voted for... Who was the third party candidate? Gary Johnson.
Yeah, Gary Johnson.
Gary. He didn't get any states because nobody cares about the libertarians. But the cartogram map, the next one, I know Mr. Latimer has talked to his students about. This is more of a cartoonish map. I want you guys to think of a cartoon because it looks ridiculous. This is the map on the left that is just ridiculous. Look at the size of the United States. For some reason, South America looks kind of normal.
Yeah. Africa's tiny.
I can't even see Africa. Yeah. Where is that?
It's this little thing right here.
That's ridiculous.
Yes.
These are going to reflect about the data that we have. So this map is probably a map of GDP?
Yeah, I would guess GDP.
GDP is the gross domestic product, how much money a country makes. within their borders in 1 year. So the United States is going to be a wealthier, developed country. So it's going to be the largest. And you're going to see the other countries. That's why the continent of Africa, the entire continent, not even the country, doesn't even exist.
Yeah. Because their GDP is up.
And I'm not knocking that. It's just the fact of the reality.
Yes.
Now, example of this will be, of course, other things. It's going to be GDP. It's going to be population maps. India and China, these are going to be a lot larger because India is now, I think, number 1 in population.
Yes, they reached the top.
Whereas other countries like, I don't know, South Sudan or now East Sudan or whatever that civil war has done, is going to be a smaller population.
Right. Okay, spatial patterns. You're going to see that word a lot in geography. Spatial just means the space between places. All of geography is understanding how are two places connected. Are they connected by roads? Are they connected by culture, the internet, so on? You can observe many spatial patterns. How are places connected? First is using relative distance. This is using time to describe how far apart two places are. This is popular in big places like Texas, where I grew up in Houston. We used to joke that it takes you an hour to go from Houston to Houston.
It's because Houston is a sprawling nonsense metropolis.
Yes, it is. The other type of distance is absolute distance, which is literally using distance, which makes a lot more sense because it's easier to use measurable distance because distance doesn't change. Time changes. If I'm walking to Dallas from Houston, that'll take me days, but if I drive, it'll take me hours. So time is relative.
So a question about the Houston, because you always bring this up.
Yes.
If you go from one end of Houston to the other,
yes,
how long would it take you?
To walk or drive?
To drive.
Take you about an hour 15.
So notice he said about an hour 15.
Yeah.
It could be more, it could be less, depending on traffic, right?
Yeah.
The absolute location is going to be how many miles is Houston across?
That is a good question.
Which is, we can't even determine.
Yeah.
We can't even determine.
Okay, the next spatial pattern is a clustered. This should be an easy word for y'all to know. A clustering just means a bunch of things that are close together. Dispersed is the opposite of clustered, means everything's spread out. Elevation is the height of a place compared to the sea level. And the elevation is important to know because it impacts your climate, it impacts your population density, how high you need to have the temperature on your stove to boil water, things like that.
Denver is a high elevation city.
Yes, it is.
I just thought you'd know that.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
All right.
So again, we're looking at the absolute and relative locations. Okay, so it's very simple. Absolute location is absolutely that location.
Yeah.
Okay, give me longitude, latitude coordinates. I can find it very quickly. GPS, Google Maps. If I type in, I don't know, give me a place.
Washington Memorial.
Sure. If I type that in, it would take me exactly where it is if I was driving or if I was walking. Relative location is giving directions in reference to different points. So if I told you the Washington Monument is, you got to walk a little bit down this way. If you see a house with a red chicken sign, you've gone too far. You got to turn around. That's going to be your relative location. Absolute location is going to take you, it will tell you exactly how long it is to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Relative location, again, is going to be, it could be, you're going to say it's going to take you about 15 minutes or between 15 to 30 minutes.
It could also be like, I could say, Washington, D.C. is on the East Coast. It's very relative.
So tell me where.
Yeah, that's not descriptive at all.
Not at all.
Yeah. Okay, map distortion. Every map is distorted. Distorted means it's been changed, it's been altered, it's not correct. The reason why this happens, when you take a three-dimensional object such as the Earth and you try to present it in a two-dimensional image, like a picture, you're going to have to squeeze something or stretch something to make it fit on that map. And this is very complicated. There's a lot of math that I definitely can't do that requires you to know how to do this, to turn a sphere into a square. When you do this, it's called making a projection. I don't know if y'all are old enough to remember projectors. When I was a kid, the teacher had a thing with like mirrors, and the light would reflect off the mirrors, and it would take a real object and show it on the wall.
And everything would be like sideways and ridiculous.
It would. There are hundreds of ways to make projections because the math is different every time. We're going to teach you two of the most popular ones. And if you're ever wondering what the human head would look like projected, that's what it would look like.
It looks ridiculous.
It's bizarre and nightmare inducing. Okay.
So, types of projections.
Yeah, there are two types of projections. The first is the Mercator projection, which is, I believe, to be the most tested one. I've seen lots of questions about it on AP exams. This is the oldest and most popular. It was made 500 years ago for the use of ship captains, because 500 years ago, that was the age of exploration. People from Europe were exploring over the world, and they needed a nice straight map with straight lines for them to use trigonometry, I'm guessing.
Some geometry.
Yeah, some math. So they needed straight lines. And it did its job. The problem with this map today is that we know it's wrong because we have satellite images, and we can see that the Earth doesn't really look like this. The Mercator map stretches places out. It stretches out places in what's called the higher latitude lines that are places in the top of the Earth and the bottom. So if you ever notice that Antarctica looks just gigantic on a map, then you're probably looking at the Mercator map. Antarctica is about the size of Australia, which is, if you can see my mouse pointer, you'll see that it is not that big of a place compared to like Asia.
Greenland.
Or Greenland. A lot of people think Greenland is like Santa Claus's like empire, but Greenland is actually about the size of Madagascar, the island to the east of Africa.
That would mean that Santa Claus is Dutch.
That would mean he is Dutch. Isn't that an interesting thought?
I don't think he's Dutch. I think he might be.
Wasn't he Turkish? There was like some.
There's a lot of interesting stories, which
Yeah.
we'll probably go over about
Yeah.
the Santa Claus phenomenon. Yes.
So the Mercator map, if y'all can just remember, if you see maps where the tops and the bottoms are really stretched out, you'll know it's Mercator. A way to know if it's stretched out or not, take a close look at the shapes in the grid system here. You'll notice in the middle of the Mercator map, you see squares, and the further away from the equator or the middle of the Earth, you start seeing rectangles. What you're seeing here is the squares and rectangles are supposed to represent the same area of land. But the further away you get from the equator, the more stretched out those areas become. So this giant rectangle you see up here is actually the size of this square right here. That's what you're seeing.
It's true.
Yeah. Okay.
The other is going to be a Robinson map, and this is the more accurate map. It's less distorted projection. It shows the Earth with curves because the Earth is
round.
Is a globe.
Yes.
It is not flat.
Yes.
And I have to say this every year. We always get that one student. Yes. It is. No, it is not. The problem with this map is that the longitude and latitude lines are curved. So if you're trying to use the map for navigation, probably not the best map, not the strongest decision to use. If you're trying to, for some reason, get on a sailboat and just hang out in the ocean. If you want to, do it, but no.
Don't play life on hard difficulty. Okay. The second skill is about geographic data, which is just how we collect information about the Earth. So there are tools of geographers. There's multiple, but there's only a couple we're going to hit on. The main type is remote sensing, which just means you're using satellites, because remote means you're away, sensing means you are collecting information. That's what a satellite does. It's in space. It takes pictures. There are two types of remote sensing. The first is Global Positioning System. Y'all probably know it as GPS. GPS is 24 satellites that orbit the Earth, and they're always tracking things. They can tell you where things are and where they're moving to. That's the key difference here. There's two types of remote sensing, so you want to know the difference. So GPS tracks things. It can tell you where things are at any given moment. Every time you guys get on your phone, a GPS has made contact with you. Every time you go on your phone, you look up restaurants, the GPS knows where the restaurants are, and they communicate that to you.
It knows where you are.
It does. This also shows you your absolute location, like we talked about. Anytime you know your longitude and latitude lines, your coordinates, you know your GPS.
Fun thing to do. Don't do it right now, or do it right now. Google what are my coordinates right now. It will tell you exactly where you are on this planet,
Yeah.
coordinate wise.
Yeah. All right. The second type of remote sensing is geographic information system. Now, you guys are probably already stressing because you see there's not that much difference between these two terms. They're both G's and S's, but the key difference here is the middle word. Okay, the geographic information system just tells you information. It's not going to tell you about tracking, but it does tell you a whole lot of other useful information. It tells you temperature, it tells you the elevation, population density, where the roads are, average income per person, and important here, zip codes. It knows our man-made boundaries, and it can collect all of this information, and it would look something like this at the bottom right. It has all these different pictures it can take. Each picture tells you something different, and they stack these pictures on top of each other, and they can create a three-dimensional image like you see right here. Okay, so if you ever get confused between the two, just remember, what is the middle word doing? The GPS tells you the position, the location. It can help you find things. GIS just tells you information. Basically everything except tracking.
That's good.
Yeah.
Now, this is the big one, because we've seen this on the exam
Multiple times.
You're going to see this on probably our Unit 1 exam, and probably a FRQ somewhere. The census. Now, the census, before we even understand what the data is, the census is something that the government does every single 10 years. Basically, we count people. We count the population. Why do we do this? It allows the government to understand certain populations, population densities, who lives where, what kind of ages, the sex ratio, how many people live in each home, and the ethnicity. This gives us a lot of information about, I don't know, the government uses the information for tax purposes.
For a variety of things.
But it also gives us, it will also give businesses the data.
Yeah.
About certain clients that they could have, where they should put a business, why they should put the business in that location.
The key things here, age. So when we get into Unit 2, which is all about understanding age groups and population, age is the most important thing a country needs to be aware of. America has a really good population in terms of our age. We have an equal number of people per age group, which is where you want to be as a society. If you start to notice a higher birth rate in your country, the government has to take care of the people being born. They have to build more schools. They have to have more daycares, more teachers. There's a lot of money that has to be spent to help take care of these kids. And so the government, that's why they do this every 10 years, so they can have a glimpse into the future of what it's going to be like, so they can take care of the upcoming generation. Sex ratio, not really that important, but if you do have an unbalanced sex ratio, meaning you have more women or more men, that can lead to problems like what China and Japan and China are both experiencing.
China's going through it right now.
Yeah. China, I can't remember the ratio, but there's basically a lot of men and not a lot of women. So there are some men out there in China who will never couple with a female, which will lead to either mass immigration out of China, or we'll see a massive shrinking of their population, which we're already starting to see now.
And culturally in China, it's actually changing the cultural aspect, because when the population was male-centered, and now women understand that they have certain powers and privileges because there's only a few of them, and all these guys are trying to, couple.
Yeah.
They're realizing that women could start become more picky when it comes to their
partners and their jobs. They realize they have more of a voice, and so we're going to start to see more of a female political power come from China now, which will be interesting to notice, to observe.
We'll talk about that in Unit 3.
And then ethnicity is important to know. America, especially, we are the melting pot of the world, and our demographic, which is a fancy word for population, is constantly changing, and it helps us to know what our biggest ethnic groups are, so that we can cater to their needs. Usually ethnic groups are slow. Ethnic immigrant groups are slower to learn the language, and so it helps to have more translators or maybe have more services for those people. That way we can help them adjust to America and help them become part of our country.
Yep.
And guys, that is the end of lesson 1. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment below and we will get back to you.